Right.
Thank you. All right, do we have any public participants? Just want to make sure the public has access. Hey, Mr. Dean.
Yes, we have 5 attendees.
Thanks, sir. All right, at this time, I'd like to call the Castle County Planning Board meeting to order for May 24th, 2022. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We have the approval of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Everyone, we have Amanda Hodges here with us today. Will she be speaking to the comprehensive plan discussion?
That's correct. Yeah, she's been invited to participate in the comprehensive
In
plan
the
discussion.
interest of her time, could we move that up to item A on unfinished business?
Yeah, it's up to the board. If you want to reshuffle the order of new business or unfinished business, you can. We also have Mr. Chapman here for his UDO amendment proposal for RV parks and flood zones. So it's just however the board wants to move through those issues.
Okay. I'll make the motion to move item C up to item A and switch item A to item C with no objection. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Public comments, Mr. Hogan, do we have any public comments today?
We did not have anyone sign up for public comments.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of April 2022 meeting minutes. I'd like to thank Amy for preparing those. So everyone had a chance to review the minutes. All right, hearing no input or discussion, I'll make a motion to approve. Second. Second by Mr. Harris. All those in favor of approving the April 26, 2022 meeting minutes, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That moves us to the comprehensive plan discussion review. Chair recognizes Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you recall where we left off with the comprehensive plan discussion at the previous meeting, the board had requested a few changes at the end of the meeting. Specifically, they were to omit the logging regulations as a prospective ordinance near the back, to add the Inchley Forestry contact information to the appendix, and then to add the 2020 census information as well. I've prepared a few slides on that. They're very brief, but I can go through them quickly if you would like. I've also invited, at the recommendation of board members, invited Amanda Hodges with the Castle County Chamber of Commerce to participate in the discussion as well. I invited Camara Barnett, the Yanceyville Town Manager, as well. And last week I got confirmation that she would be here, but when I called earlier today, I think she was in the middle of a meeting. So she may arrive late or she may not arrive at all. I'm not sure, but so if you would like, I can present a little bit of information first, or we can bring Amanda into the discussion first, however you might want to work through it.
We know Amanda has a very busy schedule, so if she's ready to give us her take on the comprehensive plan and what the chamber has as far as goals for Castle County, if there's no objection, I'd love to hear from her.
No objection. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and show support in the planning process. I'm really here to answer any questions you may have of the chamber, since I've not been involved in this process from the very beginning. I am very concerned about planning and where we head. I know one of the things we're trying to do in the chamber right now, we're in the very midst of our strategic planning for the next 3 years as well as 5 years. So I think it only makes sense for us try to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of the bigger picture and where the chamber may or may not fit into that. I did attend the town's meeting when they were having a similar meeting as well, and it seemed as if they referenced the chamber on a number of occasions that I wasn't aware, and all of a sudden the chamber's doing everything, and like, wow, that's a lot for me, myself, and I, because the chamber is still only staffed by one person, and that would be myself. So there are certainly areas in the plan that I've reviewed that are of more interest, so to speak, to me than others, and not that everything isn't of interest, but things, as I was telling Tony earlier, that I feel like are more in my lane in terms of the big picture planning. But again, just coming into the process where you all are, I don't feel that it's appropriate for me to, come in and kind of give an overview when I've not been part of where you all are up to this point. Any questions I can answer, or any, how do you all see this working? And I don't even know how far along you are with this. I was given a copy of one from for 2014 that I've poured through, but I guess my thinking is we can have the best plan in the world, but who's executing? To me, it's like, oh, where do we go from here?
If I may just add something, I pulled this up from the presentation that I gave at the last meeting, just to kind of frame the conversation. These are the economic development goals from the comprehensive plan. And then, as you mentioned, the 2014 copy is the most recent plan. The county went through the process and created the plan in 13 and 14, and it hasn't been updated since. So that's what this process is.
As an economic developer, I'm not an economic developer, but the chamber has a very different, again, I get on my lane a lot, I'm told. But the chamber's role, or our mission statement, is to create an environment where our businesses can flourish, can grow, so that we have the best place to live, work, and do business. Generally speaking, that means the chamber, and especially in rural communities, and it's important for people to know, in rural communities, chambers unfortunately become event planners. And that's not what I signed up for, but I do find myself planning a number of events. That's important to keep our community together. But to grow businesses and retain the businesses, that's the role of the chamber. How do I stay involved to keep our businesses here, to help them when there is grant opportunities, to help them market, to grow the chamber community, the business community as a whole? Certainly economic development is something I'm very, very interested in, and I feel like that's very, very relatable to us. But when I look at things like tourism, when I look at some of the bigger pictures of what's going on in agriculture, just because it's close to my heart, I want to make sure I'm doing all I can to support what everyone's doing in those spaces. And I really do envision the chamber as that role that kind of helps connect the dots with people. So again, I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm not sure, because I'm not a county entity. We're a nonprofit. We only operate on money that I am able to raise through memberships and sponsorships. I unfortunately don't have the capacity to do a whole lot. I try my best, but. So is there a question you want me to answer?
No, there's not necessarily a question. Just in knowing what I know about the comprehensive plan, it touches on economic development, obviously land use planning, things like health and wellness. It really covers a lot. The only reason I brought that up is, as you mentioned, it's probably the most relatable to your role as chamber director. So I just kind of wanted to, as a frame of reference, make sure everybody's on the same page with what the comprehensive plan kind of spelled out in these bullet points as we began the conversation. So we don't have to work from those. I just kind of wanted to bring them up as a frame of reference, as I said, because it was the most similar to the work that you do. But that's all I had. I'll turn it over to the board members if you guys have questions or thoughts.
Any questions for Amanda?
I guess the only thing I could add is if you look through the goals section of this, I think it would be important to have, the different entities in the county working together to achieve these goals. And if these goals need to be revised, then that would be an important part of this process annually. I don't know if this is my first time going through this process, or we did it last year, I can't remember, but regardless, it hasn't been updated since 2014. And my observation is it's created, but then there's very little done with it. So, you know, if we're gonna create a plan that has goals, then, you know, Matthew did a wonderful job of updating, you know, what were the achievements that we can look at, achievements and maybe mishaps, you know, looking back over the year, what did you accomplish? If you don't have that process in place, then the plan is worthless. So, anyway, I like the fact that we have, you know, the group, and especially Matthew has put together a lot of updates. Hopefully that can get disseminated throughout the county on what has been accomplished. And then, you know, as this update goes to the, you know, even the board of commissioners, hope they might have some input as well on, you know, updates to goals and objectives that they have. The planning board didn't update, but anyway, I think this process of looking at these goals should just be, you know, obviously cross-functional activity.
Well, a couple things I've got is, what is the comprehensive plan for? Who uses the comprehensive plan? And I'm reading through it here, and it basically is used by developers, county staff, planning board, general public. And I looked through here and I do not see Chamber of Commerce in here. So one thing I would like to see is for you to be added in the comprehensive plan, identifying what do you do for the county. And so if somebody comes in here and look, okay, well, I'm looking for the Chamber of Commerce, and it's a good way to tell your story in the comprehensive plan, maybe provide that kind of data within this plan.
Do you have other nonprofits that are non-county entities that are listed as well? Because I mean, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not a county entity. I mean, I call Castle County Chamber of Commerce, but I'm happy to do that. But I guess my concern is I don't want to be listed in something as a county entity when I'm not. And I am more than happy, and I try to every day with what I'm doing, of course, connect the dots between what I know to be happening at the library or at the, you know, Parks and Rec as well as economic development, because I think a little bit of all their plans does funnel through the chamber, if you will, because we want to help promote those things. We want to help the agricultural piece. We want to make sure, you know, I'm working closely or trying to with the Parks and Rec on some things now too. So, you know, there's, and then there are other groups out there that are in the midst too of doing other things for the health initiative, so to speak, you know, outdoor activities and all. So, I mean, I can certainly provide something if that makes sense with the plan, if you all, you know, want me to do that. I would have to make sure my board, you know, the chamber board of directors is okay being a part of that too, I would assume, since this is something that's going to be an official document moving forward.
To answer your one question, Amanda, there are other entities listed. There's just kind of an appendix in the back of
Let's
the
see what I'm talking about.
comprehensive plan that lists a wide swath,
So just have a-
including,
Okay.
you know, there's an organization called Piedmont Together.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if they're still an organization.
Okay.
They may have been very active in 2014 and may not be now, but it's got a list of their website and contact information and things of that nature. So
Okay.
I would assume Mr. Foster speaking about kind of update to
Sure.
the context in the appendix.
Yeah, and even to add to that, Piedmont, I mean, Powder Mountain Pride, I don't know what that is. But
Right, I think a lot of those are added because some of the
They were-
suggestions in the comprehensive plan are, if the county wants to do X, take a look at the example of what's going on in Pile Mountain or Polk County. or
And that's exactly what I'm referring to also, you know, just if other people are looking at this outside of the county, then, okay, what do you do? That's what I'm just saying. I'm trying to help you
Oh, that's fine. Oh, I understand. That's totally
and plus
fine.
provide information to the county
Sure.
or outside the county also.
We have to provide that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. All right, any other questions, comments?
I don't necessarily have any specific one, but Amanda, as you think about this thing, and I mean, we're even talking big picture here. I guess the only question I might have is, what do you envision the planning board or the planning department or just the county in general doing that would be beneficial? And maybe, and specifically beneficial to the work that you do. I know that's a big open-ended question,
That's a loaded question.
but
Well, I think the most important thing all of us can do as leaders in our community right now is help prepare our community for what's going on across the border. I was at a meeting Wednesday night with the casino folks and the economic development people from Danville with a number of Castle County citizens.
so you're talking about the casino, not immigration.
I'm talking about the casino. We talk about immigration too. But I was looking around and saying,
Across the
I
border,
mean,
yeah.
you were there, this lady was there, I was there, the room was full of folks from Castle County that had lots of hard questions, unfortunately, for the people in Danville. And I felt badly because those questions they needed to be asked probably to this group or to leaders in Castle County, not leaders in Danville, because, you know, they're on their path, they're doing what they need to do to grow their community. And I think we as leaders need to be ready to help our citizens understand what's happening there, what's gonna happen. Of course, none of us really know, but by visiting other locations, just as you were saying, by being aware, you know, of what's going on over in Cherokee with that casino there, Bristol, Tennessee, this has happened all across the country. I know I helped with some of these way back when in Colorado when they were moving onto Native American properties. It's a big impact to the local economy, whether local is not in that border of Virginia or North Carolina, it's going to impact us. And I think just communication is so important for everyone. And I think from my perspective, Matt, to answer your questions, I think one of the most important things we do short term is to help our community understand what's going to happen with that, or at least have an idea of what to expect. Now, long term, I think, you know, I hate to say it, but I've seen it in this, I've seen it from Extension, I've seen it from the Historical Society, I've seen it from Century 21 or 21st Century. I've seen, when I came into the chamber, there were piles of these things, strategic plans that have been done since I left here in 1984. And I can tell you the stuff that was in that first one was pretty much the stuff that's in this one. And I don't have time to sit around and plan and create books, you know, and I know you guys probably don't either. But the fact that we can get grants to do plans and strategic this, that, and the other, and then we don't do anything, to me, that's just so sad. Because we obviously, I know these plans cost a lot of money. And I just look at that stack that's about this high. And then I was shown a few in other locations for other entities where they've done the same thing. And I'm all for rolling up my sleeves and let's do it. You know, let's make it happen if we can figure out who does what. But and I know that's an easier disease for sitting when you're dealing with this level. But I just really feel like it makes short term, if we can help our community understand what's going to happen there, and longer term, if we can look at how do we want to help our growth support what's there. Because I think it's an amazing opportunity for us to support some of that growth there. But we don't have to be all things to you know, we need to be smart about it. We need to figure out how do we get people coming through here, spending their money and leaving. Really, I mean, we have amazing places for people to visit. We've got amazing game lands. Hopefully we can get more going in those areas that make sense for folks to come through. But, you know, we don't have the infrastructure of places to stay too. So it's a lot to be dealt with, big picture, in terms of what are we ready to do? And are we ready for that? You know, how can we help some of our historical properties? You know, they've all been identified, or some of them haven't, and some of them aren't on the list here. But, you know, how do we protect what we have so that we can attract people to come through? So to me, I look at it very differently, I think, than most. I want to protect the farmland. I want to protect the farm I grew up on, that I still live on. But I do think it makes a lot of sense for us to be strategic about how can we grow our communities in a way that help our kids stay here. I don't have kids, but help our nieces and nephews stay here, or maybe go away to college and come back here with their talent. Because, you know, we're losing a lot of that. It's a brain drain. We lose all of our talent to somewhere else. Now, luckily, there's a real group of young people here that are coming back. I'm so excited Some of them are ready to get involved in leadership, and I hope they will, because, we don't want our town to just dry up and die. There are a lot of towns across Oklahoma and Nebraska where that just happened, they're gone. So. You asked me to talk, I'll babble.
I did ask you a very open-ended
I know,
question.
and I will talk
That
at
was a
most of
great
the
answer.
time, and that's inappropriate, and I know, but, I'm a cheerleader, all things casual. If I can figure out how to plug in and figure out an angle for the chamber to help, I want to do it. I get told, as I said a lot, that this isn't your lane, and I'm like, oops, sorry. But if I can help with anything the farmers are doing, the businesses are doing, I want to do it historically. I get involved with a lot of the historical stuff. But I think that, the chamber is kind of here to connect all those dots. And I think with a plan that's in place and that we figure out where the chamber goes, I would love to help make it happen. So much better on the ground, boots on the ground, making it happen than sitting in a room planning it. Right? You knew that from some of the meetings we've been in together. And you too, because you know how I do my chickens. Gotta have the farm element of it all, gotta market it, I saw it here too. We gotta have a brand for our crops, been hearing that since I got home 8 years ago. But there was a group of us that created a brand for our eggs. We're selling them all over Raleigh. We need 1,000 dozen every week, and we need more chickens to do that. So, it's possible. We're in such an amazing position. I just feel like our county's on the cusp of greatness. Not greatness turning into Brown Summit or Cary, who wants to be that, but of helping our own area the way it is be great, with a little bit of broadband and a little bit of controlled things. We probably can be just fine. I know we will be just fine, but it's just hard to get there.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
for your time, because I know.
And Mr. Chairman, Town Manager Camara Barnett has joined us as well. I know there's been some interest from a couple of planning board members about talking about town utilities and how town water and sewer and other utilities may be at some point expanded into county properties and aid in economic development that way. If you want to join the conversation, or if you guys have any questions for her, or
Yeah, certainly. Mrs. Barnett, thank you for being here today. I know you're very busy as well as the town manager.
I will talk a little bit about the town utilities. At this time, as a lot of things, kind of like the plans that we have in place right now, there are old infrastructure needs to be updated within the town, water and sewer plants. All of that needs to be upgraded with the hope in the future too, maybe kind of expand into the county. But at this present time, I think we have to kind of concentrate on improving water and sewer infrastructure within the town limits before we look at trying to expand.
I was at a meeting not so long ago, economic development meeting, and the mayor mentioned that there's an outside firm that's putting together basically a
So,
forensic analysis of exactly where all the existing lines are.
so we have a engineering firm, Hazen and Sawyer, putting together a model system for the town of Yanceyville. So we have maps in place, but a lot of those maps haven't been updated properly. So we have this model system in place to kind of tell us where we need to kind of spend the money, where we need to replace lines, if we need to even consider doing new lines or new development. So that's kind of where we are there. We're kind of like in our second phase with that. And hopefully by the end of the fiscal year, we'll have a completed, modeling plan of the town of Yanceyville. So that's the hope.
Do you have any, that you know of, any existing lines that extend outside the town into county property?
So you do know, we do run a line to Providence at this time. We have Providence customers that way. We do have the emergency line connecting to 86, so we do have that. But as far as any other lines running out in the county, we don't have any within the town at this time.
Any questions or comments?
A few questions, and I was talking to some of the members before we came in. Are there any plans to put up charging units within the county? And I'm referring to maybe electrical charging units for cars, maybe one one, for example, like where Dollar General is, one maybe over there where Food Line, one over where the courthouse is. And the reason I say that, because those are places that we could draw people that's coming in through the county to stop, purchase, look, or whatever.
So at this time, you know, we have talked about that within our planning board with the charging stations as well. But one of the things that we run into is the need right now within the county. We don't have a lot of, you know, persons or individuals who own that at this time, but I did have a private individual contact me in regards to 2 charging stations, potentially on Highway 158 and Highway 86 in those locations right now. But as far as, you know, the town taking on that type of responsibility at this time, the need isn't really there.
But see, what I'm looking at, not people necessarily that need it here, but the people traveling through.
Right, but in order to be able to get grant funding, we need to make sure it's
For the
people
needs of the
here.
county.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
But again, a lot of private individuals have contacted the town in regards to charging stations and other types of developments, but that's private.
I've been told by the county manager that the county's exploring grants for charging stations as well.
Because a lot of people maybe, if they don't see a charging station, then they may be saying, well, I'm not gonna buy it.
Right, and actually, one of my board members wants to buy one,
Yeah,
and that's the issue right now. She's like, well, you know, I really don't know where. You know,
absolutely. Well, I know you can charge your car at home, but
yeah, but
you don't know.
Just live in town and you can walk everywhere.
Some of us are not that
well,
fortunate.
true.
I'll let you know if a house comes available.
Thank you.
And we also need to update sidewalks.
Are you all involved in cell tower broadband and all that?
Letter of support, yes, we are. And with whatever we can help, we've been in contact with Matthew. But the town has also created a Wi-Fi project, doing it in 3 phases, and we're on phase 1 right now, kind of extending Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi throughout the town of Yanceyville. Right now, it's kind of like in a local, we call it the Yanceyville Downtown District, YDD. It's kind of local in that area now, around the square, fire department, town hall. And hopefully through the second phase, we'll kind of extend down Main from the high school on down Main Street. And then third phase, kind of eventually branching down each of the side streets here and down.
Have you looked at the comprehensive plan and what the town can input into that?
Well, so we are actually creating our comprehensive land use plan. We were mandated by the state. If you have zoning within your district, you have to state statute, create a comprehensive land use plan. So we are actually presenting our comprehensive land use plan to the town council June the 7th. In the meantime, because of the new planning and development regulations throughout the state, we've actually been using Caswell County's plan since from 2014. Well, I mean, we have to in order to do anything with planning and development. So the town is actually, like I said, we have created and going to propose the plan to the town council at our next meeting. But as far as adding whatever we can do, I think there is a little section included in there for that, for the town of Yanceyville. But maybe we can kind of merge them, maybe once we get ours completed.
You know, if I say, would it overlap this or the?
I'll share it with Matthew, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and actually, Mr. Oakley, one of his suggestions after last meeting was that the entities get together, this board, Yanceyville's board or town council, Milton as well,
And
so that there's some sort of coordination and at least an understanding of what the other 2 towns are going through as you prepare your comprehensive plans,
Right.
because your deadline to do that is July
July
1st.
So Milton, in conjunction with the town of Yanceyville, Milton, UNC School of City and Regional Planning, we've all been working together to finalize our plan by July 1st. So we go to adopt ours June 7th. I'm not sure when Milton is gonna submit theirs, but
So thankfully
They're real close, according to Patricia.
okay.
thankfully for the county, we're not on the same deadline.
No,
You guys
they're
want a
not.
hard July 1st deadline. It's kind of an
Absolutely.
open-ended assignment for the county.
Yes. Otherwise, we won't be able to enforce zoning.
Right.
I do have one question for you. So you were talking about the city water and sewer facilities with trillions of dollars that got passed with the infrastructure bill
I
at
have
the federal level.
I have submitted 5 applications, and hopefully we'll hear something back July. But along with myself, I'm sure I submitted 5, I'm sure other counties submitted 5 or more. A lot of money out there, but it's a lot more competition this time around. But they're looking at communities such as, Yanceyville, distressed or stressed communities, kind of getting the top priority. So I submitted 5 applications to kind of concentrate on the entire water and sewer and distribution system, so.
Right.
we'll
So,
see.
yeah, I mean, that's good information because again, that you weren't in here, but in the previous meeting, but, to me, these comprehensive plans, part of this is, how and where does the county want to grow, right? I mean, if the county wants, different types of large development, meaning business or, apartments, hotels, whatever it is, right?
Right,
The basic need for that is infrastructure. It
absolutely.
will not happen without infrastructure.
No, it will
And
not.
so, if this funding is available, then, okay, that might serve your need to upgrade existing facilities because that's what that was for, but, if the county wants to expand, we've got to have a plan to expand these facilities into areas you want to target for growth.
Absolutely.
If that's not part of our comprehensive plan, then you can forget business development. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
If the county doesn't want business development, that's fine too, right? This is up to whatever the county's goals here, right? So it's part of this discussion.
And just thinking, going back to charging stations, if you live in the county, you don't need a charging station because you can charge from home. So, but if you're coming through the county, you would need one.
Yes.
So, to me, that should be part of your, I don't know, your reasoning to get charging stations for people coming through, not necessarily for people living. Because like I said, if you live here, you don't need.
Let me share this real quick. Board members on page, I believe it's 34 and 35 of the comprehensive plan. There is a breakdown of municipal water usage per day, I believe, yeah, per day. So about 70% of the current water usage is residential, 30% commercial, and then small slivers for others. And then down here, if I remember correctly, Kamara, certainly correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the town has the capability of processing about 1 million gallons per day.
Yes,
And so 0.226, 0.96, 0.03, and 0.05. So we're currently, the town, or at least as it was analyzed in 2013-14, was only using about 250,000 gallons per day.
we're up around 450,000.
We're up around 400 now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're still, broadly speaking, about half
Yes, you still have the
of
capacity.
potential daily capacity
Yes,
for the town. So just pie in the sky goals and objectives and dreams is, the town has the capability to accommodate more connections.
Well,
It just is a matter of extending the lines.
2014, that's actually more usage increase than I would
Yeah, me too.
thought.
so this is
Do you know where that's coming from?
This is actually the water supply plan that we have to submit to NCDQ. Well, now NCDQ is then, but that was the water supply plan back in 2012, actually.
So 10 years now.
Yeah, 10 years.
And in talking with the building inspectors, I think there's a pretty heavy demand for the new high school, especially for the sprinkler system.
And
I don't know that it would account for that much.
probably not. But you also do have to realize the new development, potential development on Dillard School Drive with the apartments, new development right off of Main Street with the Echo Connects home. So just a little bit more, but then you also got to go back and think about like the prison system, they are running at half capacity right now. So you have other businesses increases and then those types are decreasing, major decreases. So.
All right, any Any other questions or comments?
What type of capacity does the solid waste sewage
The sewer,
do we have?
right
Does the
now,
town have?
right now it's 4.5, but we could have the capacity with changing one significant apparatus to the sewer plant, it could be a 0.6.
What is that again, exactly, 4.5 and
Capacity, we're not meeting that capacity at all. We're right at about maybe 400, but we could change it. The plant was built to be able to handle at least a 0.6, but we're not there. We're not close to the capacity wise.
0.6, like 600,000 gallons per day? Is that what you
Right.
mean? Okay, so right now it's at about 400,000.
About 400,000.
So everything used is processed the same day, basically, at that capacity.
Right now.
Will the deeds project put you over the limit?
No.
All right, well, Mrs. Barnett, thank you again for your time and keeping us updated as to what the town is doing. We appreciate all your hard work and effort at the town, because I've seen you work firsthand and you got a lot of responsibility.
Oh, thanks.
Appreciate you taking the
And
time.
sorry for coming in a few minutes late. I had a public records request I had to fulfill, so I apologize.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Yes, good day.
Let me see, some slides you wanted to present.
Yes, sir. Let me just move through these quickly. This is the old presentation. And just getting to the new information. So at the conclusion of the last board meeting, again, these are the requests that I received from the planning board, was add Forestry Service contact information to the appendix to remove the logging regulations from the list of potential ordinances, and then to incorporate the 2020 census data. So I did get a copy, a Word document version of the comprehensive plan from the Piedmont Tribe Regional Council, which was excellent, because now we have the capability to edit it here as opposed to having them do it. So I just added this to Appendix A. Just did a strike through on this. This is the list of potential ordinances on page 120. And then let me pass this around as well. These are the charts that I shared with the board at the last meeting. And I just added them to section 2 of the comprehensive plan. Talks about existing conditions in Castle County with populations and demographics and things of that nature. So I really just created a section 2.1, which is basically just the data update from the 2020 census, all the information that you saw in the presentation. So then in addition to that, at the conclusion of the meeting, we discussed that if any board members had additional recommendations, you could certainly call me or email me after the meeting. And I did get a couple from Scott Oakley. So one of his was to follow up on the recommendations in section 5 to allow for a staff recommendation on planning related items that come before the board and the commissioners, and to include an analysis of how that's being viewed by the comprehensive plan. And then we just talked about this, pretty relevant, to obtain an up-to-date map of the water and sewer utilities for the town. And so, oh, sorry, one more was a joint, we touched on this as well, the meeting between the different boards as you're working through your comprehensive plans.
Go back to the first slide, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Oakley's recommendation. Sorry,
That one?
staff recommendation.
Mhm.
Okay. How would that be implemented, Matt? So basically, there's some rules or applicants that have to come before the planning board, but then some of the applicants can be approved on the staff level. So is that what that's pertaining to?
No, the staff recommendation would be more of the staff makes a report or an analysis and then presents that as a recommendation to the board before you actually vote on an item. You see this a lot more in larger jurisdictions, especially jurisdictions that have zoning, where there's a lot of complex parts to like a conditional rezoning, for example. the staff will present the rezoning application, and then they'll, after that, present a recommendation where they'll say, based on the date, the information submitted, staff does or does not recommend that the board pass this. In our context, this would be, when you guys review a cell tower development or an RV park or a shooting range or whatever, in addition to just getting that data, staff would have the opportunity to say affirmatively, we do or do not recommend that you approve this item.
So as
And then the same recommendation would go, once an issue goes from the planning board to the commissioners, the same recommendation would be allowed in that scenario.
In the current environment, you're not allowed to give us. a
Correct.
recommendation.
That's correct.
So that's what.
So a lot of times
That's what
when,
the idea is here.
yeah,
It allows them to give us a recommendation where today.
a lot of times if I'm asked a question, I can't give an analysis. I can't give you an opinion on an issue because I just simply don't have that authority.
Yeah, I mean, you do a great job of giving the background information and the synopsis. But yeah, I guess that's a good point, because sometimes when we do ask you specific questions, people are hesitant to answer. That makes sense.
That's where that's coming from,
Yeah.
which I'm fine with. I mean,
Does that come from state statute, Matt, that does not allow you to make a recommendation?
no, it's just, it simply doesn't appear anywhere in the development ordinance. So it's just not.
It sounds like most counties do allow it.
I just thought he was dodging the bullet.
I'm getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not that clever.
All right, what are the other slides, Matt? Just those
Yeah.
other two?
Get an up-to-date map of the town utilities, and then have a joint meeting between the planning board, town of Yanceyville Planning Board, and town of Milton Planning Board to better coordinate comprehensive plan priorities. So as Kamara mentioned, they have to, by state statute, finish their comprehensive plans by July 1st. So I think, well, Mr. Oakley can speak to it himself, but just for the county board to know what they're working on, because it may better inform the decisions that the county makes as you reorganize the priorities for our comprehensive plan.
So we may not be able to do that this year, but in the future,
Yeah,
that would be great.
it's kind of scrap work for the future.
Well, and you certainly could. I mean, as I mentioned, they're on a hard deadline to get theirs done by July the 1st. The county doesn't have any specific deadline. So you could say, okay, let's meet with them and figure out what they're working on. Then now that we know what they're working on, we can go back and set our own priorities or amend our priorities or try to coordinate in some way. Anything in that direction.
Any other updates or input from the?
No, that's all I got.
But also, I had mentioned us putting this in there, this the North Carolina DOT schedule based on roads, bridges and all that stuff, all the way up until 2032.
Mhm.
Is there any way, and I think you said that the city, actually, or the town owns this document?
No, that's an NCDOT document. So
Oh,
that's always available on their website.
okay.
Or, yeah, it should be always available on their website or through their, like an information request to their public meetings.
So it wouldn't be necessary to put this in the comprehensive plan.
No, it wouldn't be necessary. I mean, that information is already available. The thing too is I would assume that that's subject to change. So if something is prioritized for 2026, maybe something happens and it gets reprioritized for 2028. And then we have static information in the comprehensive plan that quickly becomes outdated.
All right, any other input? Do we want to add the Chamber of Commerce to the appendix? Is there any objection on that?
Yeah, I wrote that down as something to add.
Well, are we at a point where we want to go ahead and make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners? I feel like we've had a lot of good discussion over the last several meetings. We've had input from multiple individuals and community partners. Do we want to keep chewing on this or go ahead and recommend it to the board?
I guess it depends on this item here, right? If you want to have that meeting and try to roll something in, or just go ahead and then take this and do it into a next year.
Right. Okay. How about you, Mr. Foster?
I agree that maybe have this meeting with town and see what they got. See what they got. Our information to theirs, so we can merge together what we got.
Mr. Daniel? Okay. Mr. Richmond, Mr. Harris? All right, so we'll hold off on passing until we have a joint meeting. Is that the consensus?
That sounds fine to me. Do you want me to try to reach out to those boards and schedule something relatively soon? Or how would you want to handle trying to get?
I've seen, I thought we was gonna go ahead and pass it. Because the planning is gonna have enough time for us to meet again before their deadline.
Well, I'm not sure that, I mean, they have a little bit over a month before their plan is
Give us to
finished.
the end of July, the end of June before we meet again. So that's only gonna give them a couple of days. They gotta check.
Well, I would assume they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do, and they've got to have it done by July 1st. The reason the county planning board would coordinate with them is to just be aware of what they're doing, so that you may make additional changes to the county's comprehensive.
In other words, we have more flexibility.
Well, yeah, that's fine, but. Okay.
Yeah. It's-
Also, I guess it's gonna be a duplicating efforts.
So as of right now,
I
the
kind
only,
of feel like they're going off our plan somewhat, aren't they? Past plan, so I mean,
yeah,
what are we gonna achieve?
well, legally they have to. So if a jurisdiction has zoning in the state of North Carolina, they have to have a comprehensive plan that they work from. So they've had to use the counties because they didn't have any other. But now they're having to form their own by general statute.
You know, on one hand, I agree with you, Mr. Daniel. I mean, we've heard from, we invited the mayor of Milton to come, and we had the town manager here today. I feel like we've done our due diligence, but if the board wants to continue those efforts, I see that side as well.
Will 1 month make a difference? No way. Just in case.
It's fine.
Whatever y'all want to do.
So just to be clear, the only real changes that have been made are updating the contact information for forestry in the appendix, striking this out, and then adding the 2 pages on census data. And as of right now, those are really the only changes to the comprehensive plan that have been made.
On that potential ordinance, you would also strike out the heavy industrial, right?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we now have, as I mentioned at the last meeting, we now have the high impact development ordinance. The watershed ordinance, regulation ordinance is part of the UDO. And there is a cluster development section in the existing subdivision ordinance. So really, all of these have been addressed.
Right, so wouldn't that mean all those would be taken out? Because then
Is that your recommendation?
that would be my
Okay,
recommendation.
then I'll write that
Take
down.
that as potential ordinance.
They're not potentially anymore, right? So take them out, yeah.
And so one thing too to think about is now that all of these have been addressed, this will be the opportunity for the planning board to say, is there a need for new potential ordinances? Right, or with the other goals throughout the comprehensive plan that we went over in last month's presentation, if you feel that those have been accomplished, is it now time to set forth new goals and priorities?
I don't remember seeing agricultural developments, things that we've already kind of accomplished based on the information in the comprehensive plan. Talked about,
So
yeah,
this was what we went over last time, all of these points, and they were kind of summed up in the creation of PCC's seed property. And then specifically, there's a transfer program agreement with NCA&T, the PCC county agreement that took advantage of bond dollars in 2016, the seed project will contain all of those amenities. And Amanda did speak to this a little bit. I suppose that's in her local network with the egg production.
yeah.
But there's not really a cohesive marketing program for Caswell County products, but they do offer the Farmer's Toolkit training program.
Okay, so you're saying that you would incorporate that into the comprehensive plan?
Well, all I'm saying is, if the board, okay, so these are the old goals, right? If the board feels that all of these have been accomplished, then this would be your opportunity to set new goals. And likewise with agricultural and rural preservation. We maybe have mixed results on this, so promote alternative farming, identify farming opportunities, participate in incubator farm. So with those first two, if you'll recall during my presentation, I'm not aware of anything going on with that, other than on individual farms. There's no cohesive program. On individual farms, I'm sure that's happening. The only real success there is that the incubator farm will be planned for the city project. So if the board feels that, you know, those are goals that still need to be worked towards, you keep them in. If you feel that they're outdated or accomplished, you would change them and set new goals and priorities.
Well, I know,
But ultimately, it's up to the board.
I don't know how you have it, Mr. Johnson, but I already know that these things will be happening. Starting this, well, I know they will start a facility, building a facility on 29 this summer. So I don't know if we want to come back to them once it's set up, established, and then add it in comprehensive plan. Or you want to based on what we kind of know what's going to happen.
Maybe leave it as a goal and as process develops out there. Stay on top of it once they achieve their goals, then we can update the plan. Because Mr. Hogan, we're going to update this plan every year. I mean, that's the idea. Right?
Yeah, you have the opportunity to update it every year, certainly. And it's one of the responsibilities of the county planner is to bring it before the planning board for an opportunity to update every year.
All right, so we'll keep this on the agenda for next month's meeting. Next, under unfinished business, the Chapaton UDO amendment application. Chair recognizes Mr. Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me get organized here for a moment. If I recall, where we left off was the planning board was going to continue to review and possibly make some recommendations between the last meeting and this current meeting. I have received a couple of documents, one from Mr. Oakley, which is the first handout that I'm passing around now, and a second from Mr. Foster, which is the second handout. And in summary, if I have these correct, please correct me if I'm wrong. In summary, Mr. Oakley has floated the opportunity or the board's possibility of approving Mr. Chapman's recommendation with additional changes. Mr. Foster recommends not approving the recommendations. Do I have that correct?
Well, not necessarily not approving, but what I like, based on what I see here, I like what Scott came up with recommendation.
You want to bring these up on the screen and the board can discuss? Okay.
Let me just walk through this for a minute. So when I was looking at potential changes, I guess, compared to what was submitted to us versus what I could find, it does seem like our definition of a recreational vehicle is missing some content that's pretty standard. So, a document on the North Carolina government website that had some definitions for a recreational vehicle. So the changes in blue there would be would make that definition more complete. So that's the first set of changes. So it's basically, adding under number 3, having properly inflated tires, obviously, that's obvious, because you're gonna be able to have a RV, ready for the road at any point. And then also in 25, being fully licensed, that was not in that. So that's the first set of questions. I guess we can follow them. See if we've got any comments or anything.
I'll be researching. This makes a lot of sense. Basically, we would not use floodway, we use flood.
The next section, this is a little more complicated, but so the proposal was to strike out that to allow our vehicles floodplain. So, there's a little diagram on here that I found because I was trying to find something that was clear to me in describing the difference between a floodway and a floodplain. And so this was one of the diagrams that I found that I liked because it gives a better visual representation of it, right? So the floodway is, as waters rise and, think of a floodway as more common, that's the normal channel of the water, it's going to be part of the river or stream or whatever it may be. And then the floodplain is a much broader area. And, there's obviously different degrees of this. And so as I was looking at different ideas here, came across in the UDO, there's a section 10.3.2 that is basically already exists that talks about what requirements our county has if you want to do development in a floodplain. And so we already have a section in our ordinance that covers floodplain development and what can be done and what is required. And Matthew can probably speak better to that than I can, but the proposal here would basically be you wouldn't allow a recreational vehicle park to be in a floodway, but it could be in a floodplain, but it would just fall under this section 10.2, which then requires applications and permits and certifications, just like any other development would in our county. And then there's a few other additional requirements there that currently aren't in 10.2 with regard to site plans, evacuation routes, warning signs, which I think you'd already recommend, you already said you were going to have that as part of your plan anyway.
Already found a website that sells them.
Yeah. So that's the basic concept of what came up with in terms of recommendation. So Matthew, do you have any other things you can add about 10.3.2 and what that really covers? I mean, I think the other research was that, we talked about, sewer systems and things like that, electrical permits, all of those things already have state and local ordinances that are going to define where, how, and what you can do in a floodplain. So there's nothing that we need to do additional here with regard to electrical codes or sewage disposal, sewage storage, or any of that that's already covered in ordinances. So it would be redundant for us to call out anything specific there.
Yeah, just on that, and speaking with the building inspector, the biggest issue that they look at for a development in flood zone are electrical issues. And the state code already requires a couple of different options, really. One is that the electrical panel has to be located a certain number of feet.
2 foot above base flood
2
elevation.
feet above base flood elevation. If not, it would have to be located outside of the flood zone with what our building inspector described as a quick connect or a quick disconnect cable that could run. So imagine the main connection is outside the flood zone, but there's what's known as a quick disconnect cable that runs, I believe he said underground, possibly runs to connect up at the RV site. Having worked in Onslow County, he said that they were actually fairly common down there where you've got a lot of flooding, you've got a coastal environment. With regards to septic tanks, the conversation that I had with our environmental health department, septic tanks are actually allowed within a flood zone, but if it's a type of tank that requires any sort of pumping or additional connection, let's say that there's 100 feet needed for additional pumping, the mechanical components of the pump system cannot be located in the flood zone. So you can have the tank there, but the electrical components and pump and all that good stuff would have to be located outside the flood zone. And I can't remember how many feet outside the flood zone, but I think it's relatively substantial. So that's that on the electrical and the septic issues. And then I pulled up on the screen here, this is the standard floodplain development permit application that already exists for the county. As you can see, the developer has to disclose the type of development, the firm data, which is the federal insurance rate map data for the flood zone that they're in, base flood elevation data, regulatory flood at the site. They have to disclose, they have to have an engineer's approval for waterproofing and floodproofing if they're installed. Mostly that's obviously to cover permanent installations. So in this situation, it would be if the RV park is in the flood zone, but maybe there's a laundromat or a bathhouse or a sales office or whatever. If it's outside the flood zone, it would be perfectly fine. If it's inside the flood zone, it would need to go through this review process first before being approved. But what Mr. Oakley is saying is, if an RV park is located in a flood zone, they will have to fill out this application regardless of whether or not there are permanent structures involved with the development. Correct?
All right, Mr. Hoagland, you said Mr. Foster made recommendations too.
Yeah, do you want to go over those?
Not really, because my recommendations, I like what Scott had already came up with. Basically, what I was saying, that we should not put any RVs in the floodway. The floodplain, I have no problem with, but the floodways, what I had concerns with, that's why I see basic statement. So you've already addressed this.
Any questions or comments from?
Do we know what the excuse me, Johnson, do we know what the elevation is for a floodplain? How from ground up?
It depends on what the stream or the river.
Yeah.
What it is. And if you go to the GSI map, it shows you anywhere on that, in the whole county where the flood zone is.
Yeah, I think as part of the application and permitting process as well, in addition to like the GIS maps that are available on the county website, I think you have to also look at the FEMA maps, and there's quite a few different views of this that you have to do to make sure you're understanding what's really going on here.
Okay. And my other thing is, does an environmental study have to go with that application?
I don't believe an environmental study has to go with it, but as Mr. Oakley just mentioned, what would have to happen as you fill out this application is that an engineer or surveyor would have to take that federal flood data and incorporate it in their drawings to be submitted with this document.
So think of it kind of as you're gonna have a site plan and it's gonna have overlay what the flood conditions are in situation.
And the engineers will have to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
I know again, and you said in Milton, put the campsite, again, where exactly in Milton?
Racetrack Road 57, right where that old abandoned White House is.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may just clarify a couple of things. So Mr. Chapman does have a draft RV site plan permit application that he has submitted, but that was prior to all of this. What he's requesting today is a UDO amendment change. If the UDO is amended, then he would have to resubmit his site plan for his RV park. And I just want to make sure that the board understands the next action to be taken too. So the options that you have, if you don't take action today, you have to take action by the 45 days after the initial application. So whatever 45 days would be from the April planning board meeting. But your options are to recommend adoption of Mr. Chappeton's amendment as written, recommend adoption of the amendment as revised by the planning board, which at this point would be Mr. Oakley's revisions, or denial of the amendment. Those are your three voting options, and then the next stop is the county commissioners.
With the UDO amendment application, he's not asking for relief for his particular property, he's asking to actually change. the
This will be
entire-
broadly applicable throughout the entire county, yes, sir.
And if we do, I guess the fourth option is we do nothing and it's just going to go to the.
That is correct, yeah. Technically, you have a fourth option, and that is that it goes to the commissioners as Mr. Chappeton presented after 45 days. June the 10th. Amy's telling me that would be June 10th. So if you wanted to deliberate more and then have a special meeting before June the 10th, you could do that, or you could take action today.
So if, we could just see what the board thinks about this proposal. I guess I can make, it's appropriate to make a motion to approve that change, and we could just see where everybody stands.
So your motion would be to recommend amendment to Mr. Chappeton's proposal, which is the revisions that you have presented at the board.
My proposal would just be simply to amend the UDO with this information, totally independent of his application.
Right, okay.
Recommendations.
Yeah. Well, technically, what you have done is you've revised his application.
Right, I'm just proposing a
Yeah.
UDO amendment, that's all.
Can you make a motion on something you could help?
Hell, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you can, there's no problem.
Sounds good. I will until you tell me I can't.
I'll make a motion that you second, but it's fine.
I second his motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. So that finishes unfinished business. Moving on to, excuse me, we still have the watershed review board pending appeals. Mr. Hoagland, have we heard any updates from the planning board attorney?
We have not heard any updates. I had a very brief email today with Mr. Bob Hornick, the board's attorney, and Brian Farrell, the county's attorney, to let them know that we're set up for another month's delay. And they said that's the best course of action.
Okay, great. And I see here before us in our agenda packet, the motion as presented. So I'll read out the motion. Moving to adopt the resolution from the April 26th, 2022 planning board meeting as written with the following amendment. Now therefore be it resolved by the Caswell County Watershed Review Board as follows. Watershed Review Board hearing with respect to the Sunrock appeals now scheduled to begin on May 24th, 2022 shall be and hereby is continued until the next Watershed Review Board meeting scheduled for 1 p.m. on Tuesday, June 28th, 2022. That's the motion, second by Mr. Harris. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Carries. All right, Mr. Hoagland, planning department updates. Roll that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, okay, broadband, sorry, I wasn't sure which one I had listed first. Just a couple of quick updates. A little bit of bad news, or maybe a little bit of sideways news, you might say. We have been told that construction was delayed a bit on new lines as a result of some storms and hail and tornadoes that came through in the area not too long ago, because the crews installing our new lines are the same guys that go out and work on repairs whenever there's damage. So unfortunately, they've had a little bit of a delay on that because of the storms. But from what we understand, broadly speaking, they're still on track, and we're still cautiously optimistic is the key term, cautiously optimistic that Charter will have their network finished with regards to the RDOF funding finished by the end of the year. The great grant deadline for application was May the 4th. So as far as we understand that, Charter has also applied for state of North Carolina grant dollars. And they'll really fill in, I think, maybe 5 or 6 census blocks throughout the map that the federal funding did not cover. So what it really means is they're going to grab the federal money, attach it to the state money, and it's going to have a more complete coverage map for the county. I also had a conversation with our county manager about these regular updates that we've been giving with the board, and especially Mr. Foster's interest. And Mr. Foster, if you would like, he says that it would be perfectly fine if you wanted to sit in on the regular updates that Charter gives to the county.
Okay.
Typically, I think it's maybe every other month.
Okay.
They'll come in and meet at Co-Square and just kind of give an update on their progress. And he said it would be perfectly fine if you wanted to sit in on those meetings, and I can just kind of share an email and make sure y'all are connected on that. Okay,
We'll bring that information back in.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to take over this portion of the agenda, I'll be perfectly happy.
I don't want to be.
Well, but in all seriousness, broadband is not necessarily part of the planning department's purview. I was fortunate enough to work on the GREAT grant when it first came around a few years ago, but there's no provision in the UDO that talks about broadband or anything like that. So I think just having you directly connected with them may actually be more beneficial for the board than me kind of giving a secondhand update.
Okay, yeah. My thing is that you're not doing it, we're not doing it, who's doing it?
Sure.
So that's all I'm looking
Sure. With regards to cell towers, I got an email from Doug Barker a few weeks ago. In that email, he told me that construction would begin soon on the West Caswell site. I rode out there earlier this week and I can confirm that I saw construction trucks out in the Casville area building that site. Construction is scheduled to begin on the Prospect Hill Tower that was approved on May the 18th, so a little more than a week ago. I have not been out there, so I don't know if that's confirmed. And from what he said, both towers should be completed by the end of June, pending weather or any other delays.
Matt,
Yes, sir.
the Prospect Hill Tower, is that the one on the left headed south
If you're headed south, it's on the right.
behind the Dollar General?
Yes, behind the Dollar General.
What about the one across the road? Whatever.
That one never really came to fruition. That was approved before I became the planner, if I remember correctly, but they never actually built it. So they have the authorization to build a tower there if they want. They just never actually went through with it.
The side across the road was a better option.
I suppose so. I mean, what happens, from what I understand, a developer looks at a broad swath of coverage area, and they'll say, okay, here's a void on the map, basically. So within that void, let me dial down and find properties that may be eligible for construction. So it's not a surprise to me that Mr. Barker found a property basically right across the street from where somebody else found a property 4 or 5 years ago. Because it's all within the broader coverage map.
Now, Ruffin and Prospect Hill, where's the other one supposed to be?
The other one that was approved is in High Towers, pretty much right across the street from South Elementary School.
And he doesn't have a staff.
He hasn't given me any update on that one whatsoever.
Thanks for the updates, Mr. Owen. Appreciate you. keeping
Yes, sir.
us in tune with what's going on. Seeing no other items on the agenda, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
And move to adjourn.
Mr. Harris. Second. All those in favor, please let me know by saying aye. We'll adjourn.
When is it going to be?
It's on the left. If you're driving towards Reedsville, yeah, you pass, it's not Burton Chapel Road. Is it Burton Chapel Road? You pass on the left.
I understand.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, you pass that road on the left and then you go around a turn.
Right.
And as you come out, over on the left, it expands out really big, really wide open.
It's a pond there. it's a back of the-
It's gonna be in that field, closer, kind of closer to those houses.
Well, that
That are there on the
I hadn't seen it. But I did it.
Yeah, it's down. I mean, it's gonna be behind some trees.
Okay.
Yeah,
They've already started.
yeah. They've already started. I don't know. They haven't had our inspectors out yet because what they do is they prep the foundation and they pour the concrete. Then that needs to be our inspectors first. Inspections, the footing of the tower.
Okay.
So they'll go out, it was raining the other day when I went out there. So I assume right now they're doing site prep work, then they'll pour concrete, then we'll get our first inspection.
Week. No community input whatsoever. No input. It's on day one. All right.
Commissioner.
You're better on a computer than I am.